Welcome to the Wild Conversation, where human being and human doing converge, reshaping the world of leadership, culture, and performance. Today, we get to have a wild conversation with Ron Carucci. Ron is the co-founder and managing partner at Navalent, where for more than 30 years, he's walked alongside CEOs, executive teams, as they navigate some of the most complex leadership and organizational challenges. He's a best-selling author of 9 books, including his latest, To Be Honest, Lead with the Power of Truth, Justice, and Purpose. A 2-time TEDx speaker and regular contributor to Harvard Business Review and Forbes, Ron is known for his rare mix of research-driven insight and unvarnished honesty. Ron, welcome to the Wild Conversation.
Sabbath, it's well to be here. Good to be with you. Rob, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Ron.
We are going to play a quick round of wild cards. I pulled 10 from our deck of 52. I do not know which ones they are, so we'll just pick a number between 1 and 10. I'll go first and answer, and then we'll pick a new number for you, and you'll go first, answer from your gut. It could be one word, or if a story comes to mind, you're welcome to share it. I'm going to go with number 4, which is, are you more focused on urgency or patience today? I am more focused on urgency. It definitely feels like there's some fires that I get the opportunity to help. It's good, but it does feel urgent. All right, Ron, number between 1 and 10.
7.
Okay. Number 7. What do you need to do today to get to where you want to be tomorrow?
Okay, 3.
We can go there. Yep.
What do I have to do today? I can look at my to-do list. That's 8 Post-it notes long. But I think what I have to really do is continue to keep falling in love and finding joy in the work, which isn't hard for me. But it seems like when the world gets crazier, we get busier. So look around and we're really busy. We've tried to find joy in all the clients. I worked really hard to sort of keep the sociopaths away, because there was a point at which that was all I thought I had a sociopath's welcome sign on my back. Try to create that boundary. But in these times, they seem to sort of creep back up, and I'm trying to be kind and gracious and refer them to other people.
Well said. I think that's the first time on all the podcasts we've done where someone has picked another number. I will go. That's awesome. I'll thank you for that, Ron. I'll go for number 2.
What experience from your past is relevant today?
Well, right now, the first thing that comes to mind is my history with Ron Carucci. It's just, I think it's relevant today. I think since the time we met, even though we don't talk often, I think there was a brotherhood between us and a mutual understanding. I just know we share that. And so that is very relevant today, which is a nice little launch into this conversation, Ron.
I expected you to say, well, because I had to help my mom get up my back surgery.
Yeah, there's the yeah, because I've had back surgery, right? So yeah, it is so good to have you on, Ron. And Sabbath, thank you for launching us out there. I got to go back to that moment. I know we've talked about it maybe every time we connect, but I want to just mention that you and I first connected. We ended up doing a conference together. It was such an interesting moment for me because this particular organization does an annual conference. And then Ron and I were like, what if they let us run it? And it was a fairly significant conference. And then I still look back, Ron, and I go, they let us run it. You put a couple of mad scientists together. It was a conference on emerging leaders. We demanded the organization put this demand out. Like, it was for a lot of senior leaders would come. And we said, they don't get to come unless they bring an emerging leader with them. Ron, what do you remember about that?
Well, it seemed obvious to us that why would you have a conference on emerging leaders if they weren't going to be there? But that was to them, it was quite novel to think like that. But I don't remember them being resistant. I remember Terry and his team being open to that.
They were.
And then we thought, well, as long as we have them here, we should actually make them talk to each other and make them make them have honest conversations about mentoring and the sort of the war between legacy and potential that they were fighting, and how do the senior leaders get out of the way of the emerging leaders, and how do the emerging leaders respect the senior leaders. And so
Yeah.
it was disruptive. It definitely
It
ruffled some
was.
feathers.
And you know what, one thing, Ron, that one of the reasons I enjoyed that so much is I love doing things in partnership together. I just love it. I never wanted to be a solo artist. And you don't get, a lot of times you have to be a solo artist, like in whatever work you're doing. And we got to do that together. And to this day, I love those kinds of moments, to be able to be there with someone who is just, we're aligned and we're figuring it out. We're going to do this. And then I remember what we did is we also said, we're going to put half of them, for part of it, put half of it, was maybe like 300 of each, of emerging leaders, and then the people who were these incumbents, I think we called them. And so we divided the room in half, so they're sitting with all the emerging leaders on one side, all the incumbents on the other. And I don't know if you remember this, because this was an important moment. Was we were both going to get on stage, I believe, to do an example of a conversation, and I had brought one of these people I was invested in, this emerging leader, and we were about to go on stage in like 30 minutes, and we're sitting on the carpet in the room of this big conference venue. And she goes, I don't think I want to do this. And I was like, okay, why not? And she said, well, because I don't think of you as my mentor. And I was like, we're about to go on the stage, and like, Ron, you set this up and you're going to,
Good to know.
good to know. But then she said, but it was interesting because she said, do you want to know why I'm saying that? I said, of course, like, fill in the blanks. Tell me what's going on. She said, I know your schedule, and I don't feel like I should take up time in that schedule to be a mentee. And it was like this really important moment for someone that I'm very close to today, like as someone I've been invested in for years. So anyway, I just so loved that, Ron, that moment that we had.
It was fun. It was fun. I do remember you, well, we at one of our working sessions, I think in my conference room at my house, you looked across the table and said, basically in your own way, you said, you're a terrible collaborator. And you thought you weren't enjoying the work together. So you were honest about that. And I said, well, tell me how I can make it better. I can't remember what the reasons were, but we fixed it because we kept going.
I think my more mature version of myself today, I think I understand it better. I think you move very quickly.
So I've been told.
And it's like, and it's like, and I mean, like, that is it's an amazing thing about your mind, how quickly your mind processes. And my mind may process some wisdom, but I need a little more time.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I look back, I think what I was really experiencing was there was this pull experience between us where we were aligned, but yet the movement of the pace was not aligned yet. And I don't think I understood that at the time. So I just,
I think, I was at Seattle School, you were at SPU, we're both in academic environments.
Yeah.
Dying to Lead had just come out. Leadership Divided had just come out. We're trying to figure out, what is this thought leadership thing, and what do we care about it, and how should we care about it? And it was a messy moment for all of us.
This latest book, I've been fascinated by it as I follow you and follow your thinking. To be honest, is a fascinating thing. And it does not surprise me, coming from my friend Ron Carucci, that you would write a book with that title. And in this, if I capture this is my simplification, but you urge leaders to be who you say you are. And you'll probably say this a lot better. And I'm so curious about, like, what is the purpose behind this book, the drive behind this book, this latest book?
Well, it didn't start to be a book. It started out to just be the research, right? So we had done the 10-year study for Rising to Power. And this is the sort of 15-year of data. Let's go back and see what's in the basket and see if we can find anything systemic rather than individual. And so at that point, the AI had, the SSPS modeling of IBM Watson had progressed. So we said, well, if it's so intelligent, why don't we ask it what we should be asking it? And so we fed all the data in, and it came back with what the data scientists call drill sites. And one of them was honesty on truth telling. We thought, oh, that could be interesting. So we began to sort of shape loose hypothesis. Now, the Rising to Power was a very clear hypothesis. Why do people fail on the way up?
Yeah.
This was can you predict the conditions in organizations under which people will tell the truth? Which we then, using the neuroscience to understand how our brains process honesty, there's sort of overlap with justice and purpose, like meaning. And so we said, well, can you predict if people can tell the truth, behave fairly, and serve something greater than themselves, or when they'll lie, be selfish and cheat.
Yeah.
And if you could predict them, could you shape the environments accordingly? So they went off and did all their magic with the data, came back, and indeed there were, I think, 6 predictive factors. We decided to focus on the big four that were the blaring ones. But the goal was to publish the research, and that was it. To sort of say, okay, hiding in plain sight are these things that your organization is doing to people and turning otherwise honest leaders or good-hearted leaders into not good-hearted leaders and honest leaders. And after the research came out, we got flooded with requests for, wow, this is fascinating. I can so recognize this. Can you run the college admissions scandal through your findings? Or how does the Volkswagen scandal pair up? Or what about Wells Fargo? How does that scare? And that's about as meaningful as a proctology exam to try and,
Yeah.
And I'm like, really? I don't want to do that. Who wants to do that work? Ugh.
Yeah.
We did a couple. We did the Volkswagen one. We did the college admissions one. But then I thought, could we have found 4 things that nobody's doing? Like, what if these are 4 predictive, scale of predictive honesty that on the upper end don't exist? Because that would suck. Some sort of.
Mm-hmm.
Then I panicked and started to go some sort of fishing for, like, is anybody out there doing this? And then things changed. Then they came out of the woodwork. Leaders, organizations, amazing heroes of people who are living and embodying and breathing these 4 findings in ways that are instructive, that were inspiring, that were illustrative of things that people were trying to do well. I thought that's a reason to write a book. Writing about a book of heroes. We did not need to talk about the buildings anymore. We don't need to talk about Wells Fargo or Theranos. Be done. We understand what happened there. It was horrible. We don't need to keep beating that drum. But to talk about the people who are living and breathing and embodying the things we all said we want in our bosses or in our employers, highlight those stories and get the chance to curate those thinkers, that was a book worth writing. So that's when it went from research to a book.
Wow.
And it's a chance for leaders to go, these are not just the saints that do this and the mere mortals, the rest of us are just meant to be flawed. These are average, ordinary people doing extraordinary things because honesty is not character. It's not about your intentions. Honestly, what we learned in the neuroscience is that honesty is a muscle. It's just like bench pressing. And if you want to be good at it, you have to work at it. It is a thing like being articulate or singing or any other skill. Honesty is a very complicated set of neural pathways and character traits and skill sets that if you want to be good at it, you have to work at it, and you have to work at it every day. Otherwise, it's not our natural tendency, it's not our natural environment to do that way. It turns out our brains are actually wired where God created to be honest. It's the rest of everything around us that pulls us back to a slippery slope of being otherwise self-protective or being intrusive or being self-interested or being fearful that causes us to stray from that. But the reality is, to be good at honesty, you have to practice.
That is well said. I have a ton of questions. You're taking my brain, as always, down a path. And so recently, one of the powerful conversations that impacted me, we had Stephen Covey on the podcast, and I was fascinated because his book, I just became a super fan. Like, it's Speed of Trust, again, just a fantastic book. And one of the things that he says in there, he says over and over again, something that I say in my book and just you would say, is like, you can measure trust. And I'll get back to, I have a big question at the end of this thought line, is that he says you can measure trust because if you can measure increasing speed and decreasing cost, that you can measure trust. So he's like, he came at it from the outcome side. And so then we had this conversation because he had read our trust research, which we came at it from the other side. I didn't set out to study trust. I set out to invest in developing leaders and pull on all these organizational drivers that we know are true. You know what I mean? It's just the fundamentals that we were putting in the hands of people to have conversations around. And what we found is that not only were they developing leader and team capacity, they were starting to trust each other. And so he and I had this conversation around this triangulation from both sides of that. And when we did our research, one of the most powerful drivers, especially at the team level, was the extent to which people were telling the truth to one another. Will not surprise you, right? And so what I'm loving about this, and I got to ask you this, is so what are some of those conditions that you discovered You know, if you want to give me the 4 or the 6, or that allowed, and if you want to break down honesty and truth, because I think they're probably really the same thing, right? Is give us some insight. Is like, we know, and we've been talking about that, we have to increase our capacity to tell the truth to one another, with each other, even if it's hard. We don't build trust by pretending to be whole. We build it by becoming whole, making an intentional investment in developing whole leaders and measuring a wild trust, a kind of trust between each other that is our deepest aspiration, that fulfills our wildest needs and expectations. That is at the core of this book, Whole Leaders, Wild Trust. This isn't a book about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about the courage it takes to show up, to lead not just with strategy, but with soul. Because in today's world, trust isn't a luxury, it's a requirement.
Pre-order your copy of Whole Leaders Wild Trust today. And for bulk book package deals, email us at contact@wildleaders.org for more information about ways to partner with Dr. McKenna to bring wild trust to your team, your organization, or your next keynote event.
And I know this is so in your sweet spot, Ron. So what are some of those conditions and drivers?
Well, I think what's interesting about the trust notion. So we get asked a lot about trust and trustworthiness. Trustworthiness, because you have to treat it as, is it an input or an output? And that's the debate in trust. And spoiler alert, it's actually both. But it is an outcome of these 4 findings. It's funny, when Marshall wrote his blurb for the book, it opened my eyes. I had never even considered this, and thinking we should have called the book Trustworthy. Would have been a better title for the book. He said, if leaders want to earn and keep the trust of their teams, this is the book. And it had never occurred to me that trustworthiness was the output that people would want, not just better. I focused on performance and differentiating between the companies that perform these ways and the cultures they shaped to their competitive performance and employee retention and all employee experience. But it never occurred to me, even though it's all throughout the book, trustworthiness is really the first building block that this puts out. We have a tool we use. It's called a trust orientation profile, and it measures trust on 12 dimensions of a continuum. And it's a great tool to sort of provoke a conversation when, the inevitable call is, we don't trust each other enough. And my first question is always, well, what's enough? Because what Stephen found is that the only antidote to complexity is trust. So when you measure speed and output, you're measuring complexity. And so my question to my people is always, is there insufficient trust on your team, or is there actual distrust on your team? Because people often mistake the two. People often mistake a lack of sufficient trust for the commensurate with the complexity of your work for distrust, meaning we have chosen to withdraw trust because people have behaved in untrustworthy ways. And so we don't trust each other enough is usually code for about 5,000 things. And until you figure out what is it code for and what's its source, you're playing in this ethereal place of this very abstract concept that people can't get their hands on. I just know how I feel when I'm around them is really what it gets come down to. But if you actually break it apart, there are very specific behavioral dimensions that can tell you, I don't trust what he's saying, or his actions and his words don't match. So the 4 findings in our book were, one is, are there say-do gaps between who you describe yourself to be as an organization and what actually plays out in real life? So take the mission statement off the wall, take the brand promise off the wall, take your purpose statement off the wall, put it on the table and say, if people followed our team around for a day with a video camera, could they use that video as a training program for those words? Or would they have to use it as a training program for how not to live those words? And as a leader, ask them the question, am I role modeling this for you to a sufficient degree? Or if people asked you if it's described me, would you roll your eyes? So when that factor's in place, when there's no say-do gaps, when words and actions align, you are 3 times more likely to have people tell the truth, behave fairly, and serve a greater good. When there's not alignment there, you're 3 times more likely to have people lie, cheat, and be self-interested, because you've now institutionalized duplicity. You've now announced to your organization, so around here, just so you know, we say one thing and do another. So that's perfectly okay. Which means people will then go, okay, so I don't have to be concerned about my actions and my words matching, because you've just announced that that's how we do things here. The second was accountability. So interestingly enough, how we talk about people's work, how we talk about how they participate in measurement of their contributions, that because our workplaces have shifted so much that the contribution and the contributor are fused, right?
Mm,
So it's no longer I filed this many cases or I printed this many t-shirts or I closed this many deals. It's my idea, my insight, my wisdom, my perspective. And so when you talk about the contribution, you are talking about the contributor. So if I
mhm,
feel like the way you're talking about me and my work is fair, dignified, and dignity was the real key contributor here, and objective, you're 4 times more likely to have me lie, tell the truth, behave fairly, and serve the organization. But if I feel like a cog in your wheel, if I feel like the system is rigged, if I feel like a number in a box, if I feel like you have no idea what it takes for me to do what I do, I now have to embellish my accomplishments and hide my mistakes from you. Now you're 4 times more likely to have me be lying and cheating because I don't feel dignified in the contribution I'm making here.
yeah,
Was governance and decision making and transparency. So if I walk into a room of people, this gets to your point about candor,
yeah.
and I feel like what's happening in that room is an honest exchange of ideas, that the person in the front of the room with the pen is not trying to guide me to an outcome, but really interested in what I have to say. I could offer a dissenting view and it'd be welcome. And the decision that we're trying to make actually has not been made yet. Now you're 3.5 times more likely to have me be honest. But if I walk into that room and I think it's orchestrated theater,
Mm,
that the decision was made yesterday, you clearly have an outcome you're trying to get us to, and the last thing you want to hear from me is a point of view that differs from the one you're trying to shape in the room. Now, the only source of truth is underground. And so now you're
mm,
3.5 times more likely to have me lie because I have to go find the truth somewhere else. It's not in this room to be found. The last one was the most surprising, was cross-functional relationships, the seams of the organization. At those seams, the classic ones, sales, marketing, supply chain, operations, R&D, marketing, HR, and everybody. If the relationships at those seams, that those seams are not designed to hold the natural tensions in the organization to make there, you're 6 times, this was a huge one, 6 times more likely to have people lie and cheat. Because when you fragment the organization, you fragment the truth. Now, all we have is dueling truths, my truth and your truth. And at that point, I'm not looking for a single source of truth. I'm looking to prove you wrong and be right.
mm,
And now I'm going to fray the organization even further. But if you have cohesion there, if those seams are stitched well, if there's a single source of truth, if we all feel part of a bigger story, you are 6 times more likely to have people be honest and tell the truth and serve a greater good. The interesting thing about the physical models is that they're cumulative. So you don't have to be perfect at all of them.
yeah.
But if you do all 4 of them well, you are now 16 times more likely to have an environment where people will tell you truth, behave fairly, and come to work for something beyond their own needs. But if you suck at all 4 of them, you have 16 times more likely to be on the front page of a New York Times story you never wanted to be in.
Wow.
And so they're all fixable. They're all hiding in plain sight. They are all very real friction points in organizations, and you can just fix one. And we play with all the statistical models to see if you improve cross-functional collaboration by 30%, what do you get? Nothing? No, you get an 18% hit in honesty. So every one of those levers is not an all or nothing proposition. You can actually just work to improve them, in gradual ways that don't flip your organization on its head and strengthen the character of your organization and the reliability of the outputs people are going to come to contribute, because they're not wondering whether or not they matter, whether or not what's happening is real, whether or not they're seen as a contributor or a cog, and whether or not someone on the other side of the aisle over there is out to get them.
Mm. Will you give us an example of a seam?
Sure. Let's talk about tech companies, product and engineering. And then if you add to that the QA folks, you
Yeah.
typically have people at war infections, because first of all, sometimes the friction is not personality. People always assume that the tensions are, we don't get along. But actually, if you dig deeper, it's almost always structural, right? So your KPIs are quality, my KPIs are speed. We're designed to fight.
Yeah.
But the competitive capabilities of the organization, so in that case, if a tech company's competing on product reliability and
Mm,
delivery, product reliability is not any one function. Product reliability is a competitive capability at the enterprise level that is the intersection of engineering, product service, customer success, and maybe operations. Those four things come together and create something different, which means when they come together, they have to behave differently. It's not the product UN where I'm the ambassador from engineering. I'm now part of something different. When we come together, we are the sum total of product reliability as a competitive, that people are betting on us and paying us to differentiate ourselves with. That means at this seam, at this intersection where we come together, we do something different.
Yeah.
You have to design it to be different. You can't just say, let's have a meeting once a quarter where we all update each other on the projects. That's not a seam, that's duct tape. But if you design this into say product reliability and delivery is this capability, it's the sum total of these functions coming together to contribute to a greater thing. This is how we resolve conflict. This is how decision rights are distributed. This is how we establish trust. This is how we allocate resources. This is who gets to make budget decisions. This is who referees when there's a tie. And you design, and this is what we all believe the sum total of the value of product reliability is that we all are part of.
Building trust in your business starts with being able to measure it so that you can create a pathway for change. Our Wild Trust Index measures the drivers of trust at the personal, team, and organizational levels. We are building the largest database on the drivers of trust inside of organizations. This survey will inform growth imperatives and the necessary organizational change needed to fuel that growth. For more information, visit wildleaders.org, click on the Wild Trust platform, and get started with the Wild Trust Index today.
We design that ourselves. We have service level agreements. We have a different thing than when I'm back in my homeroom in engineering or I'm back in my homeroom in customer success. That's a different world.
Yeah.
And so most people don't just assume the teams will work themselves out. Can't we just collaborate better? But if you ask anybody in an organization, who's your they? You see them in the car, you go, oh, what do they want? And the harder question is, who's they or you? If you have a lot of theys instead of we's, it means you probably have fractures in places where you can't afford it, and capacity and money and margin and performance are hemorrhaging in those cracks, fragmented in the organization. People are too vertically oriented in their silos. They're not big. All work today happens horizontally, but most people's behavior is oriented vertically. And that creates these fractures that don't allow people at the seams, especially when they have to collaborate well, to do it well.
Yeah. So I have a personal question around this for you. I was, as people are listening to Ron Carucci's brain work, and there's some just nuggets in there. I always think about, Ron, the classic organizational behavior textbook, because you and I have both been professors in the past, right? So every textbook, it's not rocket science to divide an organization into at least 3 levels. There's probably more, but at least the individual, the team, and the organization. Like, that's a typical structure. If you don't know that, of every textbook in the world, I might argue, you and I probably would agree on this, like the dyad matters, like the one-on-one relationship probably could be added to that stream of thought. But I was curious about where your brain, before we get into more, I have so many more questions, but where your brain defaults. And one of the reasons that I ask that is because I've realized that, over the years, that a lot of people that are in our same sphere, thinking about the same things, have unlike me, defaulted to the organization first. So they're thinking organizational level things. Some default to the team level, but I think in most cases I experience either they go like organizational, like the conditions where things occur, or on my side, you know me well enough to know, like, I just defaulted. I've even said over the years, I don't care about leadership. I care about leaders. And so my default was to leaders. When we got deep into trust and trust research, the connection to the team and the organization was always there. But if I'm honest, my default was caring so deeply about building leader capacity because of the power of that. Where does your brain default?
I love the question. And what's interesting is that, after 21 years at Navalent, our code language at Navalent is within, between, among. We have transformation has to happen deep within leaders to their own narratives and their own traumas and their own understanding of who they are in the world. It has to happen between leaders, whether that's at the seams functionally or in their relationship with peers on teams. And a change has to happen among, systemically, culturally, structurally, strategically. That's one thing, not 3. That is not 3 things. I understand our marketplace doesn't buy it that way. We have coaches, we have team developers, we have culture changers. Right. The fact that the marketplace has trained buyers to think in very dangerous ways doesn't mean I have to. And so, in any first sales call with a CEO, you have to understand that's one thing to us. Not to you may be asked, you as the surgeon, you may ask me to cut in at the within, or cut in at the between. I'll cut in where you want. We're going to do it all. If any transformational change is going to stick, we make a lot of money on the McKinsey aftermarket because we get their messes. And typically, a company will have done one, maybe even two of those areas brilliantly, like textbook, like that's a case that you leave one of those undone, that change is going to unravel. Might take a year, might take a week. But the classic one, the CEO says, I need you to make my COO a better decision maker. He's slow, he's hesitant, he's uncomfortable, he's risk averse, he gets data paralyzed. So make him a better decision maker and make him more confident. Okay. I do my diagnostic, I come back and I say, I can tell you without fail, if I make him a better decision maker, you'll fire him.
Yeah.
Here's why. Because your governance structure is so convoluted that decision rights are about as confusing as they can be. All information roadways float at the top. All of the people below him are not even thinking about themselves as decision makers. They think about themselves as information providers for you, not him.
Yeah. Yeah.
The culture is risk averse. And by the way, the amount of approvals you require on every form for the stupidest decisions tells me that he fits perfectly here right now.
Yeah.
And so if I make him that countercultural by doing what you asked me to do, the system will eat him up and spit him out. So I'll still go ahead if you want me to, but unless you're willing to change the environment in which those decisions are being constructed and the apparatus by which your decisions here are poorly constructed, changing him is cruel.
Ron, I just want to applaud. It's one of the reasons that, and not to go all academic on everyone, and Ron understands this in me, is it's one of the reasons that the area of research academically was very constraining for someone's brain who says this is the way the world actually works, because you're forced into one of these levels of analysis. Whether it's like, when I say analysis, that is like, are we going to develop leaders?
Right.
Are we going to focus our attention on just really bottom shelf team building, right? Like that's the old school way to talk about it. Or are there going to be structural organization conditions? And I'm reminded of why we connected so quickly is because literally it felt like we were born in the same womb. We have different ways of processing, but we think about these, we embrace paradox, we embrace the complexity, we embrace that all three, if you don't do all three parts, I just happen to call it whole and intentional leader development. It's a whole perspective. And I love what you just said. So good. Where in your mind, and so you mentioned this just a minute ago, is there a place of those levels of where it begins?
It's contextual, right? I have 5 proposals on my desk right now that I'm writing. Interestingly enough, the executive team stuff is making it every 7 year.
Yeah.
Like next year it'll be innovation. These things come back every 7 years. Org design is often, it's too slow. I can't get things to be done.
Yeah.
Everybody wants a coach. We've really wrecked it. We've ruined the world. You can go to Costco now and be certified as a coach. I'm a JCPenney certified coach. It's just ridiculous now. People who shouldn't be giving advice to anybody are doling out advice to people who need more than just advice.
Uh-huh.
So, I'm going to start at your pain point. I'm going to tell me what you think. But all of our diagnostics are all systemic. They're all holistically looking at strategy, structure, culture, technology, processes, governance, individual behavior. Where's their toxicity?
Yeah.
So, and then you and I would decide together, okay, well, there's 100 things you could do here. This is what the data says. This is what the MRI shows. We're in stage 3. If you don't get to stage 4, here's what it's going to take. But if you can't absorb that much change, here's a pathway. And we'll work on that together. But to suggest that there's a right way to cut in through those environments, there's not. It depends on what your remit to your shareholders is. It depends on what you've promised your employees. It depends on what your customers are screaming about. It depends on what the culture, who's defecting. Is your best talent quitting and leaving, and your mediocre talent's quitting and staying?
Yeah.
So we have to. So where do I have to start? Where's as my partner Mindy says, where's the triage? Where do you need the morphine right now?
Right.
And how do I stop the bleeding?
Let's begin there.
But so we'll do the work. We actually developed a whole series of Navalent urgent care interventions
Yeah.
People just needed urgent care to get you ready for the OR. I'll stop the bleeding. I'll put the tourniquet on. I'll get the cast on. I'll get the stitches in. But just know that's what that is. It's not.
Yeah.
And you might feel better. Do not conclude for a minute that you're good to go. So if you meet people, who don't have big budgets and they can't afford a lot of work, okay, I'll get you out of pain. I'll give you the morphine and but stabilize you. But just understand, stabilizing you for the moment means that within 3 or 4 months, those stitches will come out. You get infected. Your customers will keep defecting. You'll keep hemorrhaging cash. The board will probably fire you.
You will laugh, Ron, at this because we use some subtly different language to say the same things. And so when I was writing this latest book, Whole Leaders Wild Trust, I couldn't help but address those 3 levels. And I didn't know whether I'd be able to package it up. Like, could I actually address all 3? It started off as a whole leader development book. But as I said, we get into trust, and I layered, you get into these connective tissue between that individual development, what's going on within team members in the foxhole, and then the condition. So I called it awareness within, patterns between, and conditions around. And I know that you get that so deeply in your own writing and work. One of the things I want to ask you about before I turn the corner on I have another question I want to ask you is you mentioned dignity, and the way you were describing it's probably why my brain went down that path of these levels of analysis is it almost sounded like a version of procedural justice, but I thought of the term procedural dignity.
Yep.
Because some people might go, when you talk about dignity, the leader might say, well, how do I become a person who treats someone with dignity, which would be an individual level intervention, right? How do I coach that person to treat people with dignity? But you were suggesting that there are, I'm going to just use that word, procedural things.
Oh, sure.
Do to increase dignity.
Funny that you say that, Rob. Here's our brother from another mother thing going on. So there's a whole chapter. One of the things we wanted to do, and to be honest, is I wanted to go to other places. So I traveled to Africa. I went around the world to find stories that were not corporate. For the Seams conversation, I found these 2 ex-Compton gang Crips and Bloods guys who started a business together, a food business together, talk about Seams. I went to the Congo to understand restorative justice and how that work gets done there when women get their land stolen, and documented and interviewed their people there for their restorative justice to understand what can our accountability systems in corporate America learn from how restorative justice happens there in environments where there is no justice. Turns out a lot. Turns out that accountability is a distributed capacity. One person is never going to be an arbiter of accountability, and nor should they be. And so if the system of accounting, has anybody ever said to you, I'm so excited, today's my performance review? No. People would rather have root canal without Novocaine than, one of the most important processes in organizations that should be the most honoring and dignifying and celebratory is the most dreaded, because leaders suck at it. There's always surprises. You should never be surprised. And I'm reduced to a category. One of the stories that was so vivid to me, in the middle of writing the book, I was doing a coaching call with a client. Brilliant guy, on the top of the succession slate to be the next COO. Woman he reported to was COO. Great guy. We intentionally booked his coaching call for after his performance review, just to debrief. I wasn't expecting any surprises. It's a Zoom call. He comes on the screen, and I can already see the veins in his neck are bulging. Without no hello, nothing. She gave me a 3. And I'm like, Tim, what do you mean? I'm always a 4. I've been a 4, but top rated. But now HR says there's a quota, so I'm a 3. Who the fuck got the 4s? I'm like, he is so dysregulated. Like, he's out of control. I said, could you just email me the document? we need to help you. This is obviously traumatizing for you. And I'm reading while he's perseverating. I'm reading the words that she wrote, the description of the points, and it's beautiful. Like, it's accurate. The things he needs to develop are still things he needs to develop. Progress was noted. His contributions was celebrated. He is still the top candidate to be the next COO. And there's some at the bottom was stupid categorization. There was a quota, and he was not in the 4. And she did it because he won't care. I can't get, I have to keep people, whatever. So this stupid processes that HR comes up with to make sure there's even distribution, he got a 3. Well, if you dig into the neuroscience, our amygdalas respond to categorical thinking the same way they respond to any threat. He saw that 3 no differently than he saw an oncoming truck. His identity was threatened. He was now put in a box, and he felt unseen, unknown, concocted, and his body, his nervous system was doing what it was designed to do, react to a threat. And I'm like, this is what HR does to people.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we doing this? Why? Because we can't train people to do good performance management and feedback. So we give them these stupid tools to say, put people in a box, distribute the numbers, make it fair. Sameness is not fairness. And so we give people these ridiculous forms to fill out. And usually how it works is I fill out the form for you, give it to you, you add a couple of notes and sign it. And then we have a 10-minute meeting going, all good? And that's the annual moment where I, as an individual, get to know whether I matter or whether I belong. Everybody in your organization shows up to work every day with two questions on their mind. Do I matter? And do I belong? And if they cannot be certain the answer to those questions is yes, and they doubt it, all the capacity that they would normally put into their performance now goes into looking like they matter and looking like they belong. And we have all seen the performance of those things. It is not pretty. And here was Tim now, poor guy, performing his mattering and performing his belonging because someone put him in a box he didn't feel like he belonged in. He missed all the words, all the praise, all of the accurate assessment of who he was gone because of a number.
So I'm going to throw up a softball but I don't know how you're going to hit it. Is it the leaders or the organization's job to make sure everyone feels like they belong?
Yes. Yes. It is the leaders of the organization's job to make sure people know that they belong. It manifests itself in systems and processes and cultures. It is first line of defense at a leader relationship. As a leader, you should not want that. You should not want to be the exclusive source of someone's sense of dignity in an organization, because then you can't sustain that when you have 8, 10, 12, or 100 direct reports. But certainly, the old cliche is true that people don't quit companies, they quit bosses for a reason.
Yeah.
So that is certainly the first line of defense. It is not sufficient to retain top talent.
Let me dig into the nuance of it, though. Is it their job to make sure everyone belongs, or to make sure that everyone can discern whether they belong or not? Like, is there a reality?
That's an important distinction. So belonging is personal, right? It's in the eye of the beholder. I think that if there are cultural misalignments, there are values misalignments, you made some career choices, you have unresolved trauma from 7th grade gym class, whatever it is, the fit question, which is always the easiest excuse to throw somebody out, but a legitimate fit question may mean that I can be kind and welcoming and hospitable to you. I can support and reward and celebrate your work. And this may be the wrong place for you.
Yeah, that's good. This is so great. So much wisdom. Our mutual friend, Amy Edmondson, was on, and I had this interesting conversation with her. We were talking about trust, and not just that, but psychological safety. And of course, in a conversation with her, it's going to come up, and failure. And one of the things that she mentioned that we talked through was trust being a choice. And we got pretty far into some issues related to worldview. I don't know that she would describe it that way, but it was interesting because we talked about this, that trust on some levels is a choice. And I said this, I was actually speaking on a virtual conference yesterday, and I kind of shocked people, I think, because I said, we're making a choice to trust people who are untrustworthy. You know what I mean? So I'm curious about your thoughts on how do we make this choice to tell the truth to one another when in fact people may hurt us with it. It got deep into this conversation around vulnerability, and vulnerability, the definition I always say is like straight out of the dictionary, is it's the openness to being hurt. Like, that's literally what it is. So if I do tell you the truth, there is a chance you will hurt me with it, or I'm also making a choice to trust someone who is broken just like me.
Yep.
Would you just speak to that for a moment?
Yeah.
Like, what are your thoughts on all that?
I saw that I saw that in your pre-workout. I love that question. And of course, I love Amy. She's just a dear human being. And she was incredibly generous. She's a big feature, and to be honest, because she was just so generous with helping Matt, and her brilliance is about failure. She was in the middle of doing the right kind of wrong when I talked to her, and so it was all fresh. Here's the thing I think people don't understand about trust. It's an economy. Trust is a currency, and we all trade in different currencies, and we all believe or make the unconscious assumption that I earn trust in the way I extend it. So I may extend trust to you because of your competence, or I may extend trust to you because of your character, your words and actions being similar, or I may extend trust to you because of your personality and it's similar to mine. I may extend trust to you because of your generosity or your smile. I also may withhold trust from you based on those things, or I may be guarded in how much trust. It's also, it's not yes or no, it's a degree.
Mm,
If you earn my trust with competence, I'm going to assume I earn yours the same way. You might not give a shit about competence. You may care
mm,
about character. And if you perceive, because I'm a loud New York Italian, that I'm self-interested and self-involved and arrogant because of my style and don't ever get to know who I am, you may withhold trust because you've made a character assessment that I don't even know you made.
yeah.
And all of a sudden it's like, why doesn't Rob like me? Rob doesn't trust me.
Yeah.
So then I decide, well, then maybe I shouldn't trust him.
Uh-huh.
We've never had a conversation about, Rob, how do I earn your trust?
Uh-huh.
And then to assess, well, how much of your trust do I need for us to collaborate? I don't need to see you naked in the shower, but I do need you to trust it enough because we share this report together that our boss wants.
Yeah.
Or we're making really complicated R&D investments together that are going to make or break the future of our innovation pipeline for the next 10 years. Then I need to be naked in the shower with you.
Yeah.
And so, but if we don't have a contracting conversation around, well, how do you extend and withhold trust and what's important to you? And we don't negotiate for how this is going to work. I'm going to make all kinds of assumptions and so are you. We're never going to know that. And the relationship that could have been wonderful and collaboratively very productive goes to because we didn't talk. And now multiply that by 128, because if you have 10 people or 12, I think it's 12 people on your team, you now have 128 relationships.
Yeah.
And if every one of those has not negotiated its own trust currency, that economy, you now have inflation and deflation in the economy of trust. And I don't even know what currency we're trading in.
Yeah.
And if we don't ever have the conversation about how that's going to go individually and collectively, we're going to make it up as we go and it's not going to go well.
Yeah. Ron, thank you. I hesitate to speak to our listeners, but I'm going to for just a moment, because I think one of the things, if you listen to Ron's thinking and the wisdom he's bringing, is that he literally went from beginning with these conditions, things we can do organizationally to change how we actually interact with one another. And he just finished with something quite personal. Like, it's like these interactions between us, and to not deny this reality that these relational connections, these synapses in our businesses, and they're affected by the conditions we set, even something like how we do performance conversations, all the way to the heart and soul of two souls trying to have a conversation together around who we are, how vulnerable we are, that would relate to our performance to get that thing done that our managers asked us to do together. And so, Ron, good golly, thank you so much.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Thank
Always
you so
a
much.
pleasure.
Wow, thank you. I have pages full of notes from being on the sidelines. Thank you, Ron. Before we wrap up, we want our listeners or those that are watching to know what is the best way for them to connect with you. What you've said resonated. They want to follow up with the work that you're doing. Obviously, get the book, To Be Honest. And what's next?
So there's a website called tobehonest.net. Where you can, there's all the researchers there, all the articles, there's a whole video series there. One of the things we did was I suspected that when I interviewed all the heroes, I was going to hear far more than I could put in the book. So we actually turned it into a 2020 News Magazine show. So there's a 15-episode TV show called Moments of Truth, where you get to watch and see who these heroes are and and hear their stories. And I also had a couple of other guest feature co-hosts with me. So you get David Muir and Barbara Walters. And so it's 15 episodes of really wonderful stories you can binge watch. I think it's on Roku too, but you can binge watch on the website. Navalent.com. You can learn more about our work together. Find me on LinkedIn and connect there.
Perfect.
Stay in touch. Yep.
And one last wild question, Ron, are you in a season of accepting yourself or changing yourself?
Yes. It's both. I'm actually finishing my 3rd year of training in trauma-informed leadership on neuroscience of leadership, because I just couldn't handle all these coaching-resistant behaviors leaders were bringing me. And of course, you have to deal with your own trauma and your own nervous system dysregulations in order to be able to help others. And so I am in the process of changing myself in order to better love myself.
Yeah. So rich. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to this Wild Conversation podcast. For more information, visit wildleaders.org, click on the Wild Trust platform, and get started with the Wild Trust Index today.